as the name suggests, loops will give us the ability to run a bunch of code multiple times inside our applications. For example, let's say I want to print out the numbers from 1 to 100. Or let's say I'm going to go through my list and find any number that is bigger than 10 and remove it. Now let's create a loop. So the first way of creating a loop is by a for loop. By the way, we have a bunch of ways to create a loop. The for loop is one of them. So the structure of for loop is very simple. Just like if, we say for, and we open up parentheses, and then we open up curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, we want to put the codes that we want to be inside the loop. So for loops have their own kind of structures, and it contains three parts. The first part is to define a variable. So let's say we have an int, and let's call it I, set it equal to 0. So this is the first part of a for loop. The second part, which is going to be separated from the first part by using a semicolon, is our condition. For our condition, I'm going to say until I is less than 100. Now let's close the second part and write the third part. What I wanted to do is to say I plus plus. The plus plus means that add one number to the I. It's something that we can use anywhere inside our code. So when I say I plus plus, I mean add one number to the I. I can also say I plus equal to 1. It means the same. It means add one number to the I. Or I can say I is equal to I plus 1. And that's the same as well. But it's cleaner to say I plus plus. And let's remove I equal to I plus plus. Alright, so now what I want to do inside our for loop is to write down our I. So I'll say console.writeLine, and inside the parentheses I'm gonna say I. And if I run the application, alright, here you can see we have the numbers from 0 to 99 because the I is equal to 0, and we said until I is less than 100. If we want the 100 to be counted, so the 100 itself be inside our loop, we need to say if it's less than or equal to. So if it was equal to 100, also run the for loop for us. And if I want it to be from 1 to 100, I just need to set the I to 1, and let's run it again. And here is from 1 to 100. Now that's the structure for a for loop, and we have another kind of loop, which is a while loop. A while loop, well, the structure is basically kind of like if. And we say while, here is the condition, and here is the curly brackets that we are going to put our code inside. So the while loop is a little bit different from a for loop. The difference is that we cannot have an integer of I, or there isn't any structure inside our while loop, and there is just the condition. So if you want to have a counter like our for loop, we need to create a variable for it. So let's say I want an integer of counter, and I want to set it to 1. Let's just create the exact same thing that we created for the for loop. And here I'm going to say until the counter is less than or equal to 100, run the while loop. And the third part, which is I plus plus, I'm going to put it inside the loop. And normally we set this as the last code inside our while loop. So what is going to happen is that we are going to run all of our code, add 1 to the counter, and run the while loop again. So the only piece of code that we want, as the Visual Studio suggests, is console.writeLine counter. So let's just comment out the for loop and run the application again. Here you can see the same result that we had for the for loop. Now the last way of looping that I'm going to show you is called for each. Basically for each is just used for types like lists and arrays, which we have a collection of data. And as the name suggests, it will loop through each of our values. So for each of our values, it will run a loop. For example, let's say we want to have a print of our list. The syntax is very simple. I'm just going to say for each, 2 parentheses and 2 curly brackets. Then inside our parentheses, we just need to specify a variable of type of our list. So our list here is integer, so I need to specify a variable of type integer, which will indicate the current element that it is processing. So I'm going to say int number, and here I'll just say in numbers. So I don't think that it needs much explanation. Besides that, the name doesn't matter. I can put I in here or any name that I want. And let's just say console.writeLine number. Now, if I run my application, here you can see our list has been printed out. And you can do any other operation on the list if you want. But something that you should consider is that you cannot remove the data from inside of for each. And the reason for that is, for example, our numbers is 5 element, and when we remove an element, it will become 4 element, and it will mess up the counting for our for each. And the way that we can solve this problem is by using a normal for, or we can use a while loop as well. And the way that we can fix it is by counting the values downwards. So when we're counting the values backwards, let's say we start with element 5, and the program will say, okay, 12, which is element 5, at index 4 is more than 10, it will remove it. Here we have checked element number 4, and the element and the problem that we had with indexing will not occur anymore. For doing that, what I want to do is to say the I is going to be the number of elements that we have in numbers. And a way to do that is by saying numbers.count. So numbers.count will give us the number of elements that we have inside our list. And we're going to say unless I is more than equal than 0, what I want you to do is to minus the I. So minus just like plus will subtract one value from our variable. But the problem here is that the numbers.count will give us the number of elements that we have inside our list, and the number of elements is 5 here. But the indexing will start from 0, so we actually don't need the exact number 5 from our numbers.count. So the last number, we are not going to use it. So I'm going to just say numbers.count minus 1. And now it will start from one number less than the actual count of elements that we have, because the indexing is going to be a start from 4. Now for removing the data, I'm just going to say numbers.remove at, and I'm going to remove the index that the value exists in there. And the last thing is to put our condition, because now it is removing all of the numbers. So our condition is to say if the numbers I is more than 10, you can remove the number. So because our code inside our if is just one line, I don't need the curly brackets. So the curly brackets will be used just when we are going to have more than one line inside our if. You can use it or skip using it when you have only one line. And here you can see all of our numbers that are more than 10 have been removed from our list, and we didn't occur any problem inside our loop. Now do not worry if it is getting a bit complex and if you don't understand some things. You're gonna learn very much more when you visually see the things in action inside the projects. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you want to encourage me to create more videos like this and support me, you can just like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.